The sound of a gunshot echoed through the dusty main street of Redemption Creek, Wyoming territory, but Hannah Jacobs didn't flinch. After 6 months in this lawless frontier town, she'd grown accustomed to the chaos. What she couldn't grow accustomed to was the secret growing inside her, a secret she'd carried alone since that night with the handsome stranger who'd passed through town last winter, leaving her with nothing but memories and a child she couldn't explain. It was 1876, and an unmarried woman with child might as well wear a scarlet letter. Hannah tugged her shawl tighter around her expanding middle as she hurried toward the general store, eyes downcast to avoid the judgmental stares of the townsfolk who had begun to whisper. 6 months ago, she'd been the respectable schoolteacher. Now she was the subject of speculation and scandal. Miss Jacobs, Mrs. Peterson called from the porch of the boarding house, her voice dripping with false concern. Looking rather full these days, perhaps too many biscuits at breakfast. Hannah forced a smile. Just the changing seasons, Mrs. Peterson, requires more layers. The lie tasted bitter on her tongue, but she'd grown skilled at deception. She had to her position, her reputation, her very survival depended on it. The school board wouldn't keep on a teacher in her condition. An unwed mother was no role model for impressionable young minds, they would say. She slipped into the general store, the bell above the door announcing her arrival. Mr. Thornton, the proprietor, glanced up from his ledger, his eyes immediately dropping to her midsection before meeting her gaze. Miss Jacobs, what can I help you with today? Just some fabric, Mr. Thornton, for a new dress. A dress that might better hide her changing figure. As he measured out the yards of dark blue cotton, Hannah felt another set of eyes on her. She turned slightly to find herself being observed by a man she'd never seen before. Tall and broad-shouldered, with a weathered face that spoke of days spent under the harsh western sun. His clothes were dusty from the trail, but even covered in the grit of travel, he cut an impressive figure. "That'll be 85 cents, Mr. Thornton said, drawing her attention back. Hannah counted out the coins, painfully aware that her savings were dwindling. Soon enough, she'd have nothing left. No job, no money, no respectability, and a child to feed. As she tucked the package under her arm and turned to leave, the stranger tipped his hat. "Madam," he said, his voice deep and resonant. Hannah nodded curtly and hurried past him, out into the street. The Wyoming spring was still cool, the wind carrying a bite that made her pull her shawl tighter. She quickened her pace, hoping to make it back to her small rented room before anyone else could comment on her appearance. Behind her, she heard the store bell jingle again, followed by the sound of boots on the wooden sidewalk. "Miss Jacobs," the stranger called. She froze. How did he know her name? Hannah turned slowly, her heart pounding. "I don't believe we've been introduced, sir." He closed the distance between them, stopping a respectful distance away. "My apologies. Heard the storekeeper call you by name." He removed his hat, revealing a shock of sandy brown hair. "Hunter Whitlock, just rode into town." Hannah studied him warily. "What can I do for you, Mr. Whitlock?" His eyes, a startling blue against his sun-browned skin, held hers. "I'm looking for work. Heard there might be some at the Davidson Ranch outside town. The Lazy D is always hiring hands this time of year," she confirmed, wondering why he was telling her this. "Mr. Davidson's foreman does the hiring." Hunter nodded, a half-smile playing at his lips. "Much obliged for the information." He paused, then added, "I also heard you're the schoolteacher." "Yes," she said cautiously, "though the term is nearly finished." And she wouldn't be returning in the fall, though she couldn't bring herself to say it aloud. By then, her condition would be impossible to hide, and the scandal would force the school board to dismiss her, if they hadn't already guessed and found a replacement. "I'm not much for book learning myself," Hunter said, replacing his hat, "but I've always respected those who teach." His gaze drifted momentarily to her midsection, so quickly she almost thought she'd imagined it. "Good day, Miss Jacobs." Hannah hurried away, unnerved by the encounter. There was something familiar about Hunter Whitlock, something she couldn't quite place. And the way he'd looked at her not with judgment, but with something else she couldn't identify left her uneasy. That evening, as Hannah sat by her window mending one of her dresses, letting out the seams to accommodate her growing belly, she saw Hunter Whitlock again. He was mounted on a sturdy bay horse, riding out of town, presumably toward the Davidson ranch. She watched until he disappeared from view, wondering why the sight of him stirred such conflicting emotions within her. The days stretched into weeks, and Hannah's secret became harder to conceal. She'd taken to wearing a corset that flattened her belly as much as possible, though the discomfort was nearly unbearable. The baby protested the confinement with sharp kicks, as if reminding her that soon enough there would be no hiding the truth. One afternoon, after dismissing her students, Hannah remained at her desk, organizing lessons for the following day. The school board had yet to question her directly about her condition, but she'd noticed their lingering glances, their whispered conversations that ceased when she approached. It was only a matter of time. The sound of the schoolhouse door opening startled her. She looked up to see Hunter Whitlock standing there, hat in hand. "Mr. Whitlock," she said, rising quickly and wincing as the corset dug into her sides. "School is finished for the day." "I'm not here for schooling, Miss Jacobs." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I came to speak with you." Hannah's heart raced. "About what matter?" He approached her desk slowly, as if giving her time to prepare herself. "I've been working at the Lazy D for nearly a month now. Folks talk, especially about a school teacher who's—" He hesitated. "Who's what, Mr. Whitlock?" Hannah lifted her chin defiantly, though inside she was trembling, his eyes softened. "Who's carrying a burden alone that she shouldn't have to?" The words struck her like a physical blow. No one had spoken so directly about her condition, not even in the whispers and rumors that followed her through town. "I don't know what you're implying," she said stiffly, gathering her papers, "but I have matters to attend to." "Hannah," he said, using her given name for the first time. The familiarity of it stopped her cold. "You don't remember me, do you?" She looked at him more closely, confusion creasing her brow. "Should I?" Hunter ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that suddenly triggered a memory, a cold winter night, a traveling stranger seeking shelter from a blizzard, warm whiskey and warmer conversation by the fire in the boarding house parlor, and later. "You," she whispered, her knees suddenly weak. "You're the man who passed through during the January storm." He nodded, his expression grave. "I didn't plan to return, had business in Montana territory." He paused. "But something kept pulling me back this way, couldn't explain it until I saw you again." Hannah sank back into her chair, her mind reeling. "You know," she said, not a question but a statement. "I suspected when I first saw you in the store," Hunter admitted. "Then heard the talk around town. Wasn't hard to count the months back to January." Shame burned through her. "I suppose you've come to gloat, or perhaps to deny responsibility." "Neither." He moved closer, kneeling beside her chair so they were at eye level. "I've come to make things right." Hannah laughed bitterly. "There's no making this right, Mr. Whitlock. In a few weeks, everyone will know my shame. I'll lose my position, my home, my reputation. It doesn't have to be that way." His hand moved as if to touch hers, then withdrew. "I've got a claim outside of town, been building on it between jobs. It's not much yet, but there's good grazing land, a sturdy cabin." She stared at him, uncomprehending. "What are you suggesting?" Hunter met her gaze steadily. "Marry me, Hannah. Give your child a name, my name." The proposal, so unexpected, so matter-of-fact, left her speechless. When she finally found her voice, it emerged as a whisper. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life," he said. "What happened between us? It wasn't just a night of comfort in a storm, not for me. I thought about you every day since." Hannah shook her head, rising from her chair and moving away from him. "You don't know me, Hunter. One night doesn't make a life together." "I know enough," he insisted. "I know you're kind and brave. I know you faced this town's judgment alone rather than name me or seek me out. And I know that's my child, you're carrying my future." The words, spoken with such conviction, brought tears to Hannah's eyes. For months, she'd thought of the baby as her burden, her shame, her secret. Never once had she considered it could be someone's future. "Even if I believed your intentions were honorable," she said carefully, "I can't marry a stranger." Hunter stood, crossing to her but keeping a respectful distance. "Then let me court you properly. Let me show you I'm a man worth taking a chance on, for you and the baby." She studied him, this man who'd returned to claim responsibility when he could have simply stayed away. "Why would you do this?" His answer was simple. Because it's the right thing to do, and because from the moment I met you, something told me you were different from any woman I'd ever known. After a long moment of consideration, Hannah nodded slowly. You may call on me, Mr. Whitlock, but I make no promises. His smile was like the breaking of dawn. That's all I ask for now, Miss Jacobs. A chance. The next few weeks passed in a blur. True to his word, Hunter called on Hannah regularly, always respectful, never presuming. They would sit on the porch of her boarding house under Mrs. Peterson's watchful eye, talking about their lives, their dreams, their fears. Hannah learned that Hunter had been orphaned young, raised by an uncle who taught him ranching. He'd fought briefly in the waning days of the Civil War, then drifted west, working wherever he could find employment, saving every penny toward his dream of his own ranch. Land's the only thing that lasts, he told her one evening as they watched the sunset paint the Wyoming sky in shades of gold and crimson. A man can build something on land, leave a legacy. In turn, she told him about her journey west from Philadelphia after losing her parents to influenza, her determination to bring education to frontier children, her loneliness in a town where she was respected but always held at a distance. Teaching was my salvation, she admitted. Now I don't know what I'll do. Hunter's hand found hers, warm and calloused. You could still teach. Our children, the children of neighboring homesteaders, our children. The words sent a shiver through her. He spoke as if their future together was certain, despite her continued hesitation. The truth was, Hannah was beginning to care for Hunter in a way that frightened her. His steadfastness, his quiet strength, his unfailing kindness toward her, these qualities were becoming increasingly difficult to resist. But a nagging doubt remained. Was he offering marriage out of obligation alone? As her condition became impossible to conceal, the whispers grew louder. Hannah received a letter from the school board requesting a meeting to discuss her situation. The following day, she found Hunter waiting for her after school. They know, she said without preamble. I'm to meet with them tomorrow. Hunter's jaw tightened. Then we haven't much time. Time for what? To be married, he said simply. If we ride to the county seat today, we can find a justice of the peace. Hannah stared at him, her heart pounding. Hunter, I can't just— You can, he interrupted gently. Unless you truly don't want this. If you have no feelings for me at all, tell me now and I'll trouble you no further. But I'll still acknowledge the child as mine and provide for you both. In that moment, looking into his earnest blue eyes, Hannah knew the truth. Despite her fears, despite the unconventional beginning of their relationship, she had fallen in love with Hunter Whitlock. I do have feelings for you, she admitted, her voice barely audible, but everything is happening so fast. Hunter took her hands in his. Life out here doesn't wait for proper timing, Hannah. Sometimes you have to grab happiness when it presents itself. She took a deep breath, feeling the baby shift within her. Yes, she said finally. Yes, I'll marry you today. They were married by sunset in the county judge's office with only the clerk and his wife as witnesses. Hunter had somehow produced a simple gold band that fit Hannah's finger perfectly. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Hunter kissed her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. Mrs. Whitlock, he whispered against her lips, I promise you won't regret this. They spent their wedding night at the town's small hotel before riding out to Hunter's claim the next morning. Hannah had expected a rough, half-built cabin, but what awaited her took her breath away. The cabin was small but solidly constructed, with a stone fireplace and real glass windows. A covered porch wrapped around two sides, and nearby stood a barn and corral where several horses grazed. You've been planning this, she said accusingly as Hunter helped her down from her horse. He smiled sheepishly. Hoping, not planning, but I wanted to be ready if you said yes. Inside, the cabin was simply but comfortably furnished. A curtain separated the main living area from a small bedroom, where a large bed stood covered with a colorful quilt. Made by Mrs. Davidson, Hunter explained, seeing her admiring the handiwork. She's been helping me get things ready for. Well, for a wife. Hannah turned to him, suddenly overwhelmed by the reality of their situation. Hunter, I don't know how to be a rancher's wife. I've spent my life in classrooms, not kitchens. And I don't know how to be a husband or father, he admitted. We'll learn together. His hand gently touched her rounded belly. "May I?" she nodded, and he placed his palm fully against her, his eyes widening as the baby kicked firmly against his hand. "Strong," he said, wonder in his voice. "Like its mother." The intimacy of the moment brought a flush to Hannah's cheeks. Despite being married, despite carrying his child, she and Hunter were still virtually strangers in many ways. The physical aspects of their relationship remained undefined since that one night in January. As if reading her thoughts, Hunter stepped back. "I've prepared a room for the baby, too," he said, leading her to a smaller space off the main room. Inside was a beautifully crafted cradle. "Made it myself." Tears filled Hannah's eyes. "It's beautiful." "Hannah," Hunter said seriously, taking her hands. "I know this isn't the conventional way to start a marriage. I want you to know I don't expect. That is, we can take time to truly know each other before resuming relations as husband and wife," she finished for him, her blush deepening. He nodded, relief evident in his expression. "Exactly, I want you to feel safe here, comfortable." His consideration touched her deeply. "Thank you." The next morning, Hannah awoke to find Hunter already gone from the separate bedroll he'd made for himself near the fireplace. A note on the table informed her he'd ridden into town to speak with the school board and would return by midday. Curious about her new home, Hannah explored the property. Behind the cabin, she discovered a small vegetable garden already sprouting early summer produce. A chicken coop housed a dozen clucking hens, and a milk cow watched her lazily from a small paddock. Hunter had created not just a house but a home. She realized a place where a family could not just survive but thrive. The thought warmed her even as it intimidated her. Could she be the wife this hard-working man deserved? When Hunter returned, his expression was grim. "What happened?" she asked, meeting him at the corral. "The boards decided to replace you," he said without preamble. "I told them we were married, showed them the certificate, but Reverend Simmons says your indiscretion sets a poor example." Hannah had expected this, but the news still stung. "I see. I told them what I thought of their Christian charity," Hunter continued, his jaw tight. "And then I collected the rest of your things from the boarding house." He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small velvet pouch. "Also got this from the bank, your savings." Hannah took it, touched by his thoughtfulness. "Thank you, but what will we do now?" "We'll need my income, especially with the baby coming." Hunter's expression softened. "We'll manage. The Lazy D has offered me steady work, and I've been breaking horses on the side for extra money." He hesitated. "And Mrs. Davidson mentioned that her youngest 2 children need schooling. She asked if you might consider tutoring them here a few days a week." Relief flooded through Hannah. "I'd love that." As the weeks passed, Hannah and Hunter settled into a rhythm of domestic life. Each day brought them closer, their initial awkwardness gradually giving way to genuine affection. Hunter worked from dawn to dusk, expanding the ranch bit by bit, while Hannah kept the house, tended the garden, and tutored the Davidson children 3 afternoons a week. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch watching the sunset, talking about their day, planning for the future. Sometimes Hunter would read aloud from one of Hannah's books, his deep voice stumbling occasionally over unfamiliar words, determined to improve himself. One night, as they sat side by side on the porch swing Hunter had built for her, Hannah felt a sharp pain that made her gasp. Hunter was immediately alert. "What is it?" "The baby," she nodded, gripping his hand as another pain followed. "I think it's time." Though they'd prepared for this moment, panic flashed briefly across Hunter's face before he composed himself. "I'll fetch Mrs. Davidson." The hours that followed were a blur of pain and fear for Hannah. Mrs. Davidson arrived with her eldest daughter, bringing clean linens and a calm demeanor that soothed Hannah's nerves. Hunter was banished to the porch, where he paced like a caged mountain lion, until finally, as dawn broke over the eastern hills, the cry of a newborn pierced the air. Mrs. Davidson emerged, her apron stained but her face beaming. "You have a son, Mr. Whitlock, strong and healthy as can be." Hunter rushed past her into the bedroom, where Hannah lay exhausted but radiant, a tiny bundle cradled in her arms. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "Your son," she whispered, pulling back the blanket to reveal a perfect, red-faced infant with a shock of dark hair. Hunter approached cautiously, as if afraid the baby might shatter if he moved too quickly. He knelt beside the bed, his eyes wide with wonder as he gazed at his child. "He's beautiful," he said hoarsely. "Like his mother." Hannah smiled tiredly. "Would you like to hold him?" With trembling hands, Hunter accepted the small bundle, cradling it awkwardly at first, then with growing confidence. "Hello, little one," he murmured. "I'm your pa." The baby opened his eyes blue, like his father's, and seemed to study Hunter's face with solemn interest. "What shall we name him?" Hannah asked. Hunter looked thoughtful. "What about Samuel, after my father, Samuel Whitlock?" Hannah tested the name. "It's perfect." As Mrs. Davidson and her daughter quietly slipped out to give the new family privacy, Hunter settled on the edge of the bed, still holding their son. "Hannah," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I need to tell you something." She looked up at him questioningly. "I know our marriage didn't start in the conventional way," he began, "but these past weeks with you, they've been the happiest of my life." He swallowed hard. "What I'm trying to say is I love you, Hannah Whitlock. Not out of obligation, not because of Samuel, but because you're the woman I want to spend my life with." Tears filled Hannah's eyes. "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I have since that night in January, though I was too afraid to admit it even to myself." Hunter leaned down carefully, mindful of the baby between them, and kissed her tenderly. "No more fear," he promised. "Only love from this day forward." As Samuel began to fuss, demanding his mother's attention, Hunter reluctantly handed him back to Hannah. Watching her soothe their child with gentle words and touches, Hunter felt a profound sense of peace settle over him. This was his family, his future, a future brighter than any he'd dared to dream. The years that followed brought both joys and hardships to the Whitlock ranch. Their herd grew, as did their family, with the addition of a daughter 2 years after Samuel's birth. The ranch prospered under Hunter's careful management, and Hannah established a small school in a converted barn that served the children of neighboring homesteaders. 5 years after Samuel's birth, on a crisp autumn evening, Hunter and Hannah sat on their porch swing watching their children play in the yard. Samuel, now a sturdy boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's thoughtful nature, was teaching his little sister Emma how to rope a fence post. "Did you ever imagine this?" Hunter asked, his arm around Hannah's shoulders. "That night during the blizzard, did you ever think we'd end up here?" Hannah leaned into his embrace. "Never. I thought you were just passing through my life." "Best detour I ever took," he said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Coming back to Redemption Creek was the smartest thing I ever did." "Even though I tried to hide the truth from you?" Hannah asked, a question that still occasionally troubled her. Hunter shook his head. "You were protecting yourself the only way you knew how, but some truths can't stay hidden." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining, "and some futures are meant to be shared." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple, Hannah reflected on the journey that had brought her here from shame and secrecy to love and family. The baby she had once hidden in fear had become the beginning of a life more fulfilling than she could have imagined. "I'm glad you found me," she said softly. Hunter's answer was simple and true, like the man himself. "I'll always find you, Hannah. You're carrying my heart, just as surely as you once carried our future." In the gathering twilight, their children's laughter echoed across the Wyoming plains, the sweetest sound of a future built on love, forgiveness, and second chances in the wild, beautiful West.